Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is an actual nonprofit. This is Aisha Addo from Power to Girls. Aisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much for having me, Alex. I'm really excited to be here.
So I'm curious to know your background story. What are yours? I sometimes call it your superhero origin story. How is it that you,
Oh,
up until the moment where you decided to start your organization? I just want to know like your back history.
yeah, no, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, my story. So I always like to say that I don't think I ever planned to be in the nonprofit sector. And I think a lot of people that are in the nonprofit sector would agree with me. It was never a planned thing. For me personally, so actually started Power to Girls Foundation when I was around 17. I had moved to Canada when I was around 14. I ended up in the foster care system. And there was a couple of instances that really pushed me to essentially create safe spaces for girls. So for for background, I was in a foster care system. And one of the key moments for me was when my foster mom was like, Aisha, when you're in the system, there's only three things that are expected of you. Either you become a high school dropout, a drug addict, or a teenage mother. And for me, that was very interesting because it seemed like, my journey or my fate had already been decided just because I was in the system. And that was something that I really wanted to change. So while I was in the system, I was still going to school. I graduated high school. I started college. I did all of that stuff. And within my church, I recognized that there was a lot of young girls that would come to church, and then it's like, they finish church and then they just go home. But then there was also another incident that really pushed me to creating a safe space. So there was a young lady, she came to church, and there was an older lady that was like scolding her and was telling her, what she was wearing was not appropriate and a whole bunch of stuff. So then the lady left and then the girl just started crying. So I witnessed everything happen. So I went to her after and I was like, it's okay. You're beautiful. Like really just reaffirming her and reminding her that, she was an amazing person and that she was worthy and that everything that the lady was saying was not a representation of who she was and that, maybe the lady was just projecting. And I think it was also that really, moved me to see how I can create safe spaces for other people. But then it was also because I didn't have that, right? I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have someone that I could share some of the experiences that I was experiencing as well. So yeah, I think after that encounter with the little girl, remembering the things that my foster mom had said, I reached out, to her and I believe five other girls from the church. And I said, we're going to meet here on Fridays after school and we're just going to talk. And that is exactly how Power to Girls started. Six girls turned to 10. And then we put together a conference that brought about 60 girls. And then I think it was after that conference that we decided, we're going to actually do this and we're going to run this as a full blown organization. And yeah, that is the origin story of Power to Girls Foundation.
That is awesome. I'm so pleased to see you take something that could have been a negative and really flip it around to turn it into a positive. And
Thank
you're right,
you.
it's a common theme where people just seem to fall into the nonprofit space, but once they get there, it's extremely sticky and they don't want to leave. So,
Yep, definitely.
so after the conference, you said you went from about 10 to 60, and then you said, okay, this is something like we got something here. Let's see how far we can go with this. So this was how many years ago at this point?
13 years ago.
13 years. And so you're at this point, you got Power to Girls. Can you explain what Power to Girls is in today's terms?
Yes, so Power to Girls is a registered nonprofit organization. We create safe spaces for Black and marginalized girls by providing them with programming in personal development, mental health, mentorship, entrepreneurship, leadership, and tech-based programming. So we do this by actually designing and facilitating programs. And an extension of that, we also have a tech-based platform where girls can connect with mentors virtually. So essentially everything that Power to Girls stands for in the physical in terms of like providing programs, we also have a tech-based version to offer virtual support and assistance as well to girls. So yeah, that's who we are in a nutshell. And we operate in Canada and in Ghana.
All through Canada or just in certain locations within Canada?
So currently, we do only the GTA, the
Mhm.
GTHA, so the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, specifically for now. And then in terms of our virtual support, sometimes extends beyond that, but our main programming is within the GTA.
Okay. So most of the programs, it sounds like, are in person, and there's a few of them that are now offered virtually, but it's a smaller subset, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you mentioned personal development, mental health, entrepreneurship, tech, and mentorship. So I was wondering if we could just go through a brief one. Like these are the programs you offer. If we could offer or just add a description or a little more
Mhm.
detail to each of these, that would be great. So let's start with personal development. What does that mean to you? How do you help? Like, are there any requirements to be a part of this particular program? And where do you leave them? Like, in the sense of when do you feel like they've done enough personal development that they've completed successfully the program?
Yeah. So one of the things that we like to do is look at our programming from a holistic standpoint. So when we look at a young girl, so we say, let's say 14-year-old girl, for example, there are a lot of stories that they've heard about themselves, a lot of questioning that they have about themselves, and also just really just trying to navigate, their own experiences in school, life, and in the world. So when we look at our personal development programs, so when we look at our programs holistically, we say, okay, first, when we look at the girl, what are the experiences, what are the stories that they've heard about themselves that is going to limit them or stop them from actually achieving whatever it is that they want to. So our personal development is really more geared towards unlearning all of the stories that we have all heard about ourselves. So from, oh, this is what you're supposed to do as a young girl, or this is the experience that you're supposed to have when you get into high school, or, this is how you need to feel about your body, or as a Black girl, this is how far you're allowed to go within the system. So it's really unlearning all of those narratives. And then from there, we're able to actually provide you with the skills that then can turn into economic empowerment. So we look at it as for all of our programs, there is a holistic aspect where all these different pieces come together. So we will talk about you, your personal development. So the stories, the goals that you have for yourself, the things that you want to learn, your self-esteem, your self-confidence. Um, and then from there, we'll move to, okay, your mental health. How is your well-being? What are the things that is, causing you stress? What are the things that are bringing you joy? How can you, turn the things that are stressing you out into some sort of like empowerment? Then we'll move into now providing you with the actual skills. So then that's where the entrepreneurship comes in. That's where the leadership comes in. That's where the tech comes in. So that's essentially kind of like the bedrock of what our programming is. We look at it as a holistic opportunity throughout all of our programming. And then at the kind of like the top of it is mentorship. So now you know who you are, you've identified the things that are of interest to you. How do we bring in a mentor, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's group mentorship? How do we bring somebody that has also experienced, life, or has gone through their own journey, to now come back and share what that journey was like for them, but then also the things that they have learned along the way, and how can they share that and impact that into the next generation. So we look at it as a very holistic subset. Of course, we usually would run specific programs that are really focused on, like, let's say, personal development, where we're focusing on self-esteem, self-confidence, goal setting only, right? But yeah, our programming is super holistic because a girl goes through different experiences, and we don't think that the solutions should be singled out.
Okay, so instead of taking like a program by program approach, you first do some kind of analysis, you talk to them, you figure out what their needs are, and then that person might be put into multiple programs based on what their needs are and what they hope to achieve, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And then also, like any program. So currently what we do is that we've partnered with different schools. So we run the programming within the schools. So each program would have a subset of each of our pillars to make sure that the girls are getting essentially like everything that they would need throughout their time with us.
Okay. And then I guess you have a certain process that you follow to know, okay, this person definitely needs, personal development, maybe entrepreneurship and tech. They're good for mentorship, or you decide, I guess, the recipe based on each individual's person's needs and where they want to be.
Yes, I mean, in terms of like the programming, we definitely include the participants in the program design, in terms of like the things that the sessions that we would cover. So we always, before we actually start any program, we always ask the girls, what are some of the pressing things that they want to take away from, like, let's say the 8 weeks or 10 weeks that we're together. And that also definitely influences, the program delivery. But then we have kind of like a template of, program activities or engagements based off of like our different pillars. So if, let's say, we have a group of 30 and we know that based off of like the discussions that we had with them, mental health is something that comes up a lot, in all of, their in all of their responses or in all of their areas of improvement, then within that school, we would focus a bit more on mental health, but then we're still going to add the other aspects of the programming as well. It's just making sure that they're able to get the support that they need based off of what their needs are, and not just based off of what we think is the ultimate well, yeah, the ultimate thing that they need, but really just based off of their experiences as well. So that's the approach that we use, making sure that, yeah, everyone gets the support that they need.
That's great to be collaborative. And it's important part so that you make sure that it is actually catered to what they need.
Exactly.
You mentioned 8 to 10 weeks. So let's say a typical person, and I know there's probably exceptions to this, but would you say normally that they're with you for about 8 to 10 weeks in total, or is it 8 to 10 weeks per program and then it might take multiple months? Like, what is the duration of usually an engagement or a interaction with a particular person?
Yeah, so usually so everyone is different. We have girls that have been with us for 4 years. We have girls that are with us only during the time that we are running programs within their schools. Um, Mainly because our programs run middle school to high school, as well. So we would sometimes have girls that would come for, like, that 2 years. They're with us for 2 years at a time. And then they move on to, like, let's say they go to a different school and maybe we're not running programs in that school. So we're not able to continue programming specifically, but then they're still engaged with us either virtually or through our app. We've had girls that have been with us for 10 years. So I think one of the things that I always share that for me, I think is one of our strongest suit is that we've had girls that literally graduate from the programs, come back to the programs, and either become facilitators or leaders, or, they end up working for the organization in some capacity. And I think that in itself, is always a testament of the fact that, the girls always say that they love the fact that they were able to have that safe space. So they try their best to also create that safe space for others. So yeah, but our actual programming, on average, is for the school year. So if they're in school for 3 months, then we are running programs for that length of time. So on average, between 10 to 12 weeks.
Yeah, that is awesome that people want to continue participating and being involved with your organization. That's really is a testament to your success.
Thank you.
You mentioned schools as a partner. How did you build a partnership with the schools, and do you have any other kind of partnerships?
Yes. So partnership with the schools, honestly, I always say that it was by luck. So we were setting up a table at an event a couple of years ago. So yeah, maybe right now about yeah, 9 to 8 years ago. And there was a representative from TCDSB who, said, oh, I believe they were part of the equity department at that time. And they said, they have a lot of schools that wanted programming for girls, and specifically Black and marginalized girls. And if that was something that we were interested in, and we said, yes, absolutely, why not? So that was how that relationship started. It's been 8 years. We've run countless amounts of programming within the schools. We're currently in around 7 schools in Toronto and in the Peel region. Yeah, and that was how that started. But Of course, we've also been able to leverage on that partnership to build partnerships with other folks. So we've done a couple of sessions with the library. We've built partnerships with institutions and corporations to support the work that we do and to scale the work that we do. But then our primary implementing partners are usually the school boards because it allows for us to get access to the schools. And then we also do out of school programming as well. But having the partnership with the schools makes it a bit easier because then we don't necessarily have to worry about space all the time. But yeah, that's exactly how that partnership started. And yeah, it's really been cultivated over the past couple of years since then.
You've mentioned GTA a couple of times, and you also mentioned earlier you're also in Ghana, right? How do
Yes.
you how do you manage the program in Ghana?
So I always say this everywhere I go that I have an amazing team. So I go back and forth between Ghana and Canada. But I have an amazing team that really understands the work and loves the work and are passionate about the work, are passionate about the girls. And they're able to, yeah, like deliver the programming. So in Ghana, for example, our programming is quite similar. We work within the schools. We have a partnership with the education ministry here that allows for us to access the schools. But then again, we always tweak the programming to fit the communities that we're in or to fit the girls, right, and their needs. Because again, the experiences of girls in Canada and the experiences of girls in Ghana might be similar in terms of issues, but in terms of the way that we might deliver it would be different, mainly because we're dealing with different environments, we're dealing with different cultures as well. So yeah, we're able to basically share resources and do the same bedrock in terms of like what our pillars are, but the execution is sometimes different because we have to take into account the on ground experiences of the girls. So yeah, really amazing team. I feel like a team is like having an amazing team really makes it easy for any founder or like any nonprofit leader to really execute, their plans. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love the expression, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So it sounds like
Yes.
you've surrounded yourself with amazing people. And I'm curious to know more about how you found them, because you mentioned earlier that some people come back and they want to be part of the program as a mentor or
Mhm.
and help in some way. But I imagine there must have been, or there are other ways of you finding these people. So how do you find your staff and your volunteers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll start off with like a Canada team. So for a Canada team, our program manager actually was one of the six girls that started out with Parity Girls, right? And I always like to say that she's our poster child, in the sense that she's been there from the very beginning, seeing the organization grow as she herself had grown. Yeah, she is a testament of like the work that Power to Girls does. And she's amazing, right? And that was how, she started off, she came back as a volunteer, then came back working for the organization as a facilitator. And then she has, grown through the ranks and is now a program manager as well. So that's exactly how we found them. They literally participated in our program, right? Our outreach manager, we put a call out and she was amazing. She did amazing in the interview process, and that's how we found her. Some of our other team members come to us through our partnership with the universities. So some of them come as placement students and then we end up hiring them. Yeah, but I think all the time our volunteers specifically always reach out to us and say, I love what you're doing. I wish I had this when I was a little girl. Is there a way that I can support? So it's really always comes down to passion. And I think at every point in our organizational journey, one of the things that I personally was very mindful of when building the team was making sure that the people that we were bringing on board had a passion for this work. And that might seem a bit non-traditional, but I think it's important because passion is what is going to keep you going when times are hard, especially in this sector when things are so uncertain and things can be a bit unstable. If you actually care about the work that you're doing and it's something that you're doing from a place of passion, the results are different, right? So at any point in time, I don't think I ever wanted to have folks within our team that, would be like, you know what, I'm just here. This is a job for me. And after that, I'm gone. And I think that's for me what's really important. And it's really finding people that care about the work as much as you do, because that's the only way they would be able to carry it when you're not around. So, yeah.
I totally agree about passion. It has to be an internal motivator. If it's an external one, if it's a job, if you're collecting a paycheck, the motivation, your drive will be significantly different than if it's coming from within, where you really want to make a difference. You want to feel like you've done something good in the day for the day.
Mm.
So yeah, 100% agreed on that one. Taking a step back, because imagine there's a person like yourself who's a bit younger, who's trying to follow in your footsteps in some way. I was curious to know if you could share some things, some lessons you learned along the way, like things that you found that it could be administrative, it could be just setting up an organization, but or particularly this domain. But I'm curious to know if you had a couple of life lessons that you could share to pass on some of your knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the very first thing that I would say is from an admin. So I'm going to start from the administrative perspective. From the
Mhm.
admin perspective, I would say put in your processes from the very beginning. Document everything, keep everything, take pictures, document stories. Yeah, I think that would be the very first thing in terms of like, storytelling. Don't stop telling the story of your organization. The other aspect too is like get a really good accountant. Make sure that you understand all the different requirements of maintaining either a grassroots organization or a nonprofit organization. Keep your books, keep your receipts. That's always important. From a more philosophical aspect, is like, never forget your why. I think, for a lot of us, we get so caught up in the work of it all that we forget why we started in the first place. So never forget your why. If it means, typing it up, blowing it up on a big canvas and putting it in your office, whatever it is, but never forget your why, because that's what's going to keep you going. And also enjoy the process. Again, the work can become a bit monotonous as time goes on. It can, for example, I started out facilitating. I still facilitate. I love facilitating, but now I can't facilitate as much because I have to make sure that the administrative aspect is okay, right? And taking care of the administrative aspect. So I think it's really just enjoying the process and allowing yourself to enjoy the process as well. Because for me, for example, I always say that as the organization has been growing, I have also been growing as an individual, as a person. So really just making sure that you enjoy that process of growth and you enjoy that journey in itself. Also, capacity building. Always, don't you never stop learning in life, but I think especially in this sector, you should never stop learning as well. So if it is setting aside a capacity building budget for your team or for yourself, make sure that you do that, enhance your skill. Yeah, and yeah, don't stop learning. Like never stop learning, I would say. And then finally, I would say is build a community of other nonprofit leaders or folks that are within the same space as you, because it allows for you, it keeps you accountable and it keeps you on your toes. Within the sector, of course, there might be folks that you might consider competitors, which makes sense. And they're only competitors because you folks are going after the same grants and you're going after the same funding. But in retrospect, if the sole purpose of what you're doing is around social impact, is around changing people's lives, so building that community of like-minded individuals would be very helpful. And I always say that I wish I had that when I was starting out, because it's really hard to, navigate some of these spaces when you don't know, well, which way am I supposed to go? So really having a community of like-minded individuals is really vital. I know I said that was the final one, but I just thought about another one that I think is really important is build with the people that you're building for. And what that means is that do not assume that you have all the answers to the issues that you are trying to solve. The best people to build with while you're building whatever it is that you're building is the people that you're building for. So do not leave them behind. And I think, yeah, that those would be the lessons that I have picked up along this journey.
Well, I love the inclusion of the last one. I totally agree. All these points are actually fantastic. The community of leaders, I also advocate for this. I call it a tribe. You basically want to build your own tribe of like minded people who challenge you, who you can bounce ideas off, and you can be there for each other equally. And that's a very important lesson, I think, not only for executive directors, but I think a lot of professionals could use and benefit
Mm,
from a tribe.
absolutely.
Let's jump then to fundraising. I'm curious because you mentioned corporate sponsors, institutions, and stuff like that. I'm curious to know how you manage fundraising just to, keep your organization going. Nonprofits obviously think a lot of nonprofits unfortunately think that fundraising is a dirty word to a certain extent, that they have to be very scarce, have a scarcity mindset and meager means, which I completely disagree with. But I'm curious to know your perspective on fundraising and how you manage it and how you're able to keep growing.
Yeah, honestly, fundraising is a beast of its own when it comes to the nonprofit sector, especially when, funding in itself is sometimes limited. For us, I think it's, one of the key things that has made us successful over the years is knowing our niche and sticking to our niche. So we know what we do very well, and we know how we do it, and we know exactly what sets us apart, so we know what our value proposition is. So I think at every point in time, that's one of the things that we hammer down on. Over the years, grants have been one of our key areas of fundraising. Just writing lots and lots of grants, creating a database of lots and lots of funders. So that has been one of the areas. We also, have been able to establish partnerships, sometimes very small, with other corporations and institutions as well. In terms of, external fundraising, we also do have individual donors that, sometimes would donate funds to us, but it's not like it's not a lot. So we recently, actually, and this is actually one thing too that I would recommend, is having someone that sole purpose is focusing on fundraising. And we have an amazing, amazing, amazing consultant that we work with whose sole purpose now is on fundraising and ways that we can raise funds to scale our programming or to scale the organization in whatever capacity. So that's been the way that we've been able to grow rapidly. And I think, like, we've definitely seen a difference from when, we brought on the fundraising consultants to when it was just me, doing fundraising, doing admin, doing programming, like, and I think that's maybe another lesson that I'll say is like knowing how to delegate and bringing on board people that are able to really, take whatever it is that you've built and literally just running with it. So yeah, it's that's essentially it. But I think one of the key challenges when it comes to fundraising specifically that any nonprofit leader or anybody in the nonprofit sector will share is, the need for operational funding and the lack of it. So for a lot of us, our funding is very programmatic based. So once your program is done, it's like, okay, great. Now we have to look for another funding to support this other program. But yeah, that's been how we've been doing it really. And just staying consistent with what works and how it works as well.
It's very difficult when you're a small organization. And as the executive director and founder, you want to do everything. But at some point, you
Yeah.
get to a moment where you just can't. And finding the right people and delegating and letting go is a big challenge that I know a lot of nonprofits have. But it's the
Yeah.
right thing to do. It has to be done. You have to trust the people you let in to take over and to see your mission. And it might be not exactly your like the mission should be the same, but the process to get there might be a bit different, and that's okay as
Yep.
well. And it's hard
Yes.
because it's your baby, and but it
Yep.
needs to be done.
Yep. Yeah, no, it definitely needs to be done. And I think, on the topic of letting go, one of the things that, one of my mentors said to me, and she said, Aisha, if you want to see Power to Girls grow and you want to leave a legacy, you have to make sure that it survives beyond you. And I think that was very profound for me at that time because, there's this idea that like, yeah, it's my baby. I want to make sure that I do everything. But in that mindset, you don't grow because everything is basically limited to your limitations, right? And that in itself is not a sustainable way to grow anything. So I think it was a really good reminder, and it was a good, slap on the head saying, yes, this is what you have to do. You gotta get over yourself in a sense, and also get over, everything that you think this has to be, and allow folks that are smarter than you, folks that have more experience than you, folks that are passionate about this as well as you, to also take charge. And yeah, that's really it was good. It was a good wake up call for me personally. So highly recommended.
I love that expression that it survives beyond you. That
Mhm.
is one thing. It's another mantra I think you should definitely keep in mind when you're building something because that's really the essence of it. That's the goal. So it has to be more than you if it's to survive beyond you. Mm.
Exactly.
I was going to ask actually one of my questions next was, well, what good advice did you receive along the way? But that's I think that one is it. That's
Oh yeah,
absolutely
that one is
fantastic.
definitely
That
it.
was.
Yeah.
I'm curious then if you could share. I want to just take a sidestep here because I have to talk about technology. You mentioned technology earlier as well. How do you manage all of this with your technology? You can't obviously do it on pen and paper anymore. So, just briefly, if you could talk about some of the major platforms or tools you use. You don't need to use names in particular, but more categories of things that you use.
Yeah, I think everyone would agree that Excel sheets are the bane of all of our existence, but they work. And they make things a bit easier. So for us, Excel sheets, honestly, Google Drive is our go-to technology. However, we also have a management platform that we use to essentially manage everything else. So that's how we manage, participants that participate in our program. That's how we manage volunteers. Volunteers get to track their hours. That's how we gather feedback as well. So that is essentially how some of the ways that we manage everything. Unfortunately, I feel like it's always so frustrating because as a nonprofit, we all have like, specific needs. And it's always interesting trying to find something that basically cuts across every need that you can possibly think of. And it's always so challenging to find that. So you end up having things in like different places. But I think Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Drive is always our go-to. If there's something that we need that we can't find a platform for it, we're like, okay, let's just create an Excel sheet for it. So that's one. As an extension of our program, we actually do have an app. Um, that allows for girls to connect with mentors. They're able to access a helpline. They're able to, learn new skills. So we create our programs in a form of like short content videos, and then we put it on the platform. So then they're able to access it whenever and wherever they are. So that's in a way kind of like our virtual programming space or our virtual space. But in terms of like management and everything else, yeah, Excel sheet and our management platform.
I'm curious then, you didn't mention a CRM. Are you using Google Sheets as your CRM?
So in terms of like CRM, yeah, we use Google Sheets, or sometimes depending on, so for our user base, we have our platform that we use to store the participants in our programming, but then everything else is Google Sheets, the old school way.
If it works, I mean, the one thing, I mean, I'm a Salesforce guy, so I like talking about CRM. But the idea of
Mhm.
any technology is making sure it fits your needs, right? If
Yeah,
Excel still works for you or Google Sheets works for you, then that's great. People tend to only, I would recommend rather, people change their CRM and their technology only when they've outgrown them. But as you scale, your needs will be different, and hopefully in
yeah,
1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now, you will be in a place where Sheets just isn't working for you anymore, and you need more capacity. So,
yeah. No,
yeah,
absolutely. And I think, one of the restrictions of technology, or like I would say programs, different platforms in general, is around, so two things, right? A lot of nonprofits do not get a technology budget. That's one. The other aspect is that in order for you to basically get everything that you need in just one platform, it requires customization, which oftentimes you do not have the capacity or you do not have the funds to do so. So that's always the tricky part, because we've tried CRMs, but it's like, oh, it does this. And we're like, oh, but we really needed to do this. And they're like, yeah, that's an extra charge. And we're like, yeah, we don't have that money for that extra charge. So that's the reason why we end up sticking with Excel. We've outgrown Excel, definitely. But the CRMs that we've been looking at and the things that we need it to do, just so that we can have a one platform for everything, requires customization. And unfortunately, oftentimes we do not get the budget for that. So that's the challenging part.
Let's have a side conversation after this. Maybe I can help you in some way and give you some direction, or at least some considerations for, what you might want to look at in the future.
Definitely. I would definitely love that.
Awesome. Let's talk about positive impacts. I mean, we've talked briefly about it. You've, said a few things about people who are, leaving the level, who complete the program rather, and then come back to want to participate. But I was wondering if you could share some more success stories. Stories you've heard of people or have seen of people, really being in a bad place when you meet them, and then being in a much better place when you finish working with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is always my favorite part because it allows for me to, big up my girls. Um, I think, yes, I shared the story of, our program manager who started with us, when she was in elementary school. Again, within the education system, I seen her go from elementary school to high school, having her, her teacher, her guidance counselor telling her that she's not going to be able to go to university. I've seen her graduate university. I've seen her, now practicing in the field that she actually studied for, which is amazing. We've seen girls, I'll give an example of our three. So we have a podcast as well, and this is hosted by our girls. And, the podcast hosts came into our programming during maybe a little before COVID. And, there's one of the hosts in particular. She was very, very shy. She was not one to speak much during programming. She was just very quiet, always observing. Very smart, very beautiful girl. And yeah, we said we were starting a podcast and we wanted some of the girls to host. And she put herself forward and she said, you know what, I think I'm gonna give this a try. I know that, like, it's a new space for me, but I want to give this a try. And over the past 3 years, I've literally seen her grow, not just in terms of confidence, but like in maturity, in like the way she speaks and, the way that she gathers her thoughts and all of that stuff. And, I always say that the work that Power to Girls does is not something that, we can always quantify, because the changes that happen within. The changes that happen, is very personal. But it's always so beautiful when I see how, like, for example, if we take the podcast as an example, if you listen to their very first episode to like their very last episode, you can see the growth, you can see the comfort in her voice. And it's always so beautiful for me personally, because I'm like, wow, like, we were able to create a space that does that. To date, we have worked with over 5,000 girls in both Canada and Ghana. We have seen, like, I think on average, we see about 20% of the girls that participate in the programs come back in some capacity. Currently, the girl that has been with us the longest, aside from, of course, our program manager, our logistics coordinator, um, is Shewa, actually. And she came to us during the pandemic as well. And she came to us when she was, I believe, in grade 5, grade 6. And, we've seen her grow. She has finished high school. Now she has finished middle school. Now she's in high school. She's been able to get a scholarship to go to a private school. And like, it's just all these different stories that we hear all the time, of the ways that, you know, just being able to speak up for yourself and just being able to be in a space that allows for you to be yourself really contributes to like your overall well-being. So yeah, all of the Power to girls are just phenomenal. And yeah, I'm always so happy to be a part of their journeys as well. Yeah.
It is difficult to qualify when the change is mostly internal, but it sounds like you
Mhm.
found ways to share this, and it's exactly that through stories, and it's lovely to hear that. And I agree, as a podcast host, the first few episodes are usually not very good, and it takes a little while before you get comfortable with your voice and how you present yourself. So, but that's great, and it's a great mechanism to improve self-esteem and your speaking and communication, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
I'm curious then to know what is in your short-term future. Where would you like to see your organization in, let's say, 2 to 5 years?
In 2 to 5 years, I think really just continuing to scale, expanding into more schools. Over the next couple of months, 2025, we are releasing our documentary about our impact over the past couple of years. So we're really excited about that. And yeah, building more partnerships and opportunities for our girls. I think that's our very short-term goal, is building more partnerships and creating spaces that allows for the girls to connect with folks in, non-traditional workspaces or non-traditional sectors and fields. Yeah, that's the goal. That's the short-term goal, and really just continuing to make impact.
Would you like to see it beyond the GTA area, or is it something you want to keep to there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. We're always looking for more opportunities to grow and more opportunities to build partnerships beyond the communities that we serve now. So yeah,
So,
definitely.
so if there's anybody in Canada who's in other parts of the country that would like to participate, please reach out to Aisha. That would be great.
Yes.
So, Aisha, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this story with us. I was curious if you could share a bit more about how people can get in touch with you if they have questions or participate or donate. Where can they go for all that good information?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so very much, Alex. This has been amazing. For all folks that want to get in contact with us, you can always reach us through our website, www.powertogirls.com. All of our information is on there. We are on all social media platforms at Power to Girls CA or Power to Girls GH, for those that are in West Africa. And we're also on LinkedIn, as well as Power to Girls Foundation. So yeah, you can literally Google us and we will be right there.
And what's the name of the podcast?
The podcast is Power Talks.
Awesome. Aisha, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join us again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.